Hello, and thanks for joining our presentation today. We're coming to you from beautiful Queensland in Australia, and we're going to explore what makes a quality hospital education program in our diverse state of Queensland. My name is Michelle Bond, and I'm the Executive Principal of the Queensland Children's Hospital School, and it's my pleasure today to introduce to you my two colleagues, Ben Orford and Perry Trattos, and Ben and Perry are both campus principals within our Queensland Children's Hospital School. Just to give you an overview of our presentation today, I'm going to talk a little bit about Queensland and our unique context, and how we've embarked on a research-based initiative to determine fundamental elements to a successful hospital program. We've used an inquiry cycle and have come up with our own drivers, which I'd like to present to you. Ben Orford will then talk to you about multidisciplinary collaboration and a successful example that we've got operating here in Queensland at our beautiful new site, Jacaranda Place. Then Perry Trattos is going to talk to you about some of our high quality teaching and learning programs that we have operating within the Queensland Children's Hospital School and plans for innovation for the future. As you can see from the visual up there at the moment, Queensland's in the northeastern part of Australia, and Queensland is 2.5 times the size of Texas. From the northern end of Queensland down to our border in New South Wales, it's over 3,000 kilometres, which is over 2,000 miles. Our population is just over 5 million. Population of Texas is almost 30 million. So quite different contexts. The capital of Queensland, which is where we operate from, the capital city is Brisbane. And in Queensland, we have only one dedicated large children's hospital, and that's the Queensland Children's Hospital where we work out of. We also have some major towns along our east coast, and we have rural towns in the centre and west, where we have hospital education programs operating. They are smaller programs, and they operate out of the paediatric ward within a big general hospital, or sometimes they're in a mental health unit. Our Queensland Department of Education is committed to developing and implementing a statewide continuum of educational delivery to ensure that all students with chronic health or complex mental health conditions receive specialised and appropriate educational support at all stages of their illness. The next map shows you a little bit more detail around Queensland and where our hospital programs are located. So we do have 22 programs throughout Queensland. As I mentioned, the main one being the Children's Hospital, where we have approximately 80 staff working across our 6 campuses. And then we have an additional 35 staff working at 14 sites. And you can see from the map there where they are located and how many. There's a mix of educational programs that we offer in paediatric wards or mental health units. Predominantly they're acute inpatient mental health units or day programs. In Queensland, we have embarked on a model for statewide coordination. So what that means is our programs are connected. Some of the advantages of the last few years and the work we've been doing is that we have been able to align the Australian curriculum and the delivery of the Australian curriculum in our programs. We've been able to offer some really good quality professional supervision of staff that is really tailored to the work that they're doing, and some professional learning opportunities that they may not have been getting if they were working in silos in smaller sites. Our Queensland Department of Education has a state schools improvement strategy, and the mantra we use is that every student succeeding. We do a lot of work with our programs and with schools that our students are returning to around what those words mean around every student, what does that mean around every student, and also succeeding. So we have individualised success criteria for our students, and we make adjustments and adaptations depending upon their unique circumstances. One of our priorities for our department is around success and well-being for all students as they transition through each stage of learning in an inclusive educational system. One of our principles is all about working together, learning together, and improving together. We call that intentional collaboration, and what we do across our programs is we have many ways of connecting and deliberately making connections so that we can look at successful outcomes for all students. Many of you would be familiar with the inquiry cycle and the components that we used. These include the scan and assess phase, where we prioritise, we developed and planned, we acted, and then we're continually monitoring and reviewing. The difference that we had here in Queensland is our Canadian consultants also worked with our department to develop 2 additional tools. One we call the School Improvement Hierarchy, which gives schools an opportunity to assess where they are at. And the second tool is a standard of evidence, which shows the impact that we're making. The School Improvement Hierarchy allows all schools, including our hospital programs, to monitor and to determine where they are with regards to things such as their use of data, learning culture, how they deliver their curriculum, the practices that they use for their pedagogical practice, the expertise of their teaching team, how they differentiate teaching and learning, and use of resources, just to name some. And the standards of evidence used to continually improve so we can determine the impact that we have. We use the inquiry cycle to determine what makes a quality hospital education program. In the scan and assess phase, we found that there was no clear evidence-based practice best model. We found good programs being implemented across a range of settings, but there was limited evaluation and documentation for those processes. So our inquiry involved looking at some research, some academic reports, commissioning some work ourselves. We looked at learnings from Australia and also from overseas, and we did some extensive consultation and workshops with key stakeholders within Queensland. What we came up with were some common characteristics for an effective educational program, and these included things like the programs need to be individualised, they need to be flexible, the teaching and learning programs need to meet the children where they're at, we need to have supportive transitions, continuity of learning needs to be ensured, connection to base schools when students are with us for a long period of time outside their home area is a very important part. Multidisciplinary collaboration, how our education teams work with our health teams is also paramount. The professional development of our staff was also seen as a very essential characteristic. So as a result of our work over the last couple of years, we have developed a model. We call it our 5 drivers towards best practice for a hospital education program. The first driver is around access to learning. So no matter where students live, in all settings and at all stages of their illness, learning is available to them. It might include from the pre-admission phase, initial diagnosis, time that they're in hospital, time that they're discharged, and then until they're back full-time at their base school. Access to learning is paramount. The second driver is around high quality teaching and learning. This needs to be aligned to our national, to our Australian curriculum, where programs are individualised to the students' needs, and that social emotional learning based on their hospital experience also has an impact on the quality of the teaching and learning that can be offered. Our third driver is around continuity of learning. And once again, it's back to no matter where the student lives, or the setting that they're in, or the stage of illness that they're in, that their learning is continued and that transitions are supported from one phase to the next. The fourth driver is around community belonging. This one is around the human connection and the relationships that are developed for our students, their families, our schools, their base schools, and for also our staff, so that there is a sense that they belong. The fifth driver is around multidisciplinary collaboration. So this is how well our education staff and health staff can work together with families and students for a common purpose. We've established these 5 drivers, and our work has been to explore and action how these drivers can be implemented across all of our programs in our vast areas in Queensland. Sitting behind each of our 5 drivers are a whole range of actions and things that need to be considered. So in access to learning, you'll see there's a range of things that are also part of a student's ability to access learning. And we've been able to have some great achievements in this area over the last couple of years. The first one is around a staffing model that we've been able to work with our Department of Education in Queensland so that our programs are funded effectively. They have teachers, teacher aides, guidance officer allocations for every program. We have a guarantee of some minimum staffing levels in our smaller programs, so it guarantees the long-term viability of these programs. All of our programs now have a generous budget to be able to provide learning and innovative ways for students to access curriculum remotely, which is a developing project that Perry will talk about further on. When we go to high quality teaching and learning and have a look at the actions that sit behind that one, we've had some good achievements and outcomes there as well. And the main one is around all of our programs implementing quality teaching and learning programs that are aligned to the Australian curriculum. We've got personalised learning plans happening for our medium to long-term students in all of our programs, some high quality professional learning that's offered to all staff, and alternate pathways for our students, including vocational and educational and training programs when the students are based long-term in our hospital settings. Continuity of learning. You can see some considerations there as well. The main achievements we've been able to master in the continuity of learning area is around formalising some of our transition plans and our processes between programs. We're better now at documenting and assessing and reporting on those transitions. Staff are now communicating across programs, not working in silos, but knowing each other as we've built a community of learners right across Queensland with our staff. The community belonging has been a really important part of what we've done, as we've created hospital education community with around 120 staff across Queensland who have regular times of working together via Teams meetings, online meetings, face-to-face meetings once a year, and the connections are strengthening day by day. There's connections for students as well as families, as well as base schools, so that while the students are with us, there is still an ongoing connection to their community. Our fifth driver of multidisciplinary collaboration has been one of the things that I'm most proud of, and we have developed right across the state a very deep and clear understanding of the roles for health and the roles for education staff, and how best we can work together to maximise educational outcomes. Our belief is that these 5 drivers are the essential components to a high quality hospital educational program. Our work in each of these drivers is ongoing. I'd now like to hand over to my colleague Ben Orford, who will go deeper into the 5th driver and explain to you around a successful multidisciplinary collaboration project. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Michelle. Look, it's my great pleasure to present to you today. And look, my name is Ben Orford and I'm the campus principal at Jacaranda Place, the Queensland Adolescent Extended Treatment Centre. So it's my great pleasure to present to you today, I guess, our journey here in Queensland and how we as an education team have used the 5 drivers as a best practice model, not only to help us to design and implement a program at the Adolescent Extended Treatment Centre, but how the 5 drivers and multidisciplinary collaboration have been used to shape every part of this program, from its concept through to its design, all the way through to implementation, and how we've used this process to help us on the ground in running the program. It's also helped us to design programs that we can use in partnership with our colleagues from health, and also to help us support and work with families and young people, I guess, to make sure that they have the best program and the best chance of success when they enter our service. So in 2016, here in Queensland, a service need was identified for young people between the ages of 12 to 18 with a range of severe and complex mental health needs. So as Michelle spoke about in her presentation, you'll have heard about how diverse and large Queensland is, both in terms of its geographical size and its population. So in order to cater for that service, we really had to work collaboratively with a whole range of stakeholders across the state to ensure that we captured a service that catered for all young people across Queensland. This was no small task and meant that we had to work with, I guess, using the 5 drivers to help us and shape us in the way that we collaborated with people and with stakeholders and with the Department of Health to ensure that the service that we developed and delivered was the best it could possibly be. The program was to offer a service for up to 25 young people at one time, with parts of the program catering for bed-based services and parts of the program catering for students to enter as a day service. This meant that we had to work with a wide range of stakeholders across the state to ensure that every part of the work that we did was able to support and cater for their needs. So an extensive process was taking place over 3 years. So this 3-year process was working with architects, stakeholders, collaborative approach between the Department of Health and Department of Education, past users and consumers of similar services, as well as Carers and Consumers Queensland, to design every element of the building and the service and the delivery of the program. Throughout this process, we worked really closely with both the builders and the architects, and this involved some really unique processes, including 3-dimensional walkthroughs and design workshops, statewide youth forums where we worked with young people who might access a service like this. So they told us about what sort of design elements they would like to see in a building or a program like this, to ensure that the program was world-class in both its design and delivery. This meant that young people were consulted in every element of the design process, from the colours on the walls, to the flow of the building, to the architecture, to the artwork. Every element was co-designed and collaboratively developed. This meant that the process itself was both meaningful and worthwhile for all that were involved, and ensured that when the program opened in 2020, that we had, successfully and collaboratively developed a program that we felt catered for a wide range of needs and services. So the collaboration and co-design also extended into every other element of the program, not just the physical structure of the building. It also went to the stages of the naming of the program, from the Queensland Adolescent Extended Treatment Centre to Jacaranda Place. There was a wide range of stakeholder input, both into the recruitment processes, to ensure that all staff that worked in Jacaranda Place had a deep understanding of the processes that we'd gone through in developing the program and the building. The model of care and development of the treatment framework was also collaboratively designed, meaning that every element of the program was thought of in terms of the flow of the young person through Jacaranda Place. And the development of education programs as well. So we spoke to students across Queensland who might be entering the senior years of school to find out what sort of education needs they might be having as they entered a service like Jacaranda Place. This meant that we designed education programs that we felt could cater for students from 12 all the way through till they were 18. And making sure that we aligned our teaching to students that, say, may have been in grade 7, but also making sure that we could cater for students that were wanting to go into university pathways too. By working collaboratively with a range of stakeholders, we were able to design an education program that meant we could have a barista course and a hospitality certificate, and make sure that this part of their work was incorporated with their health treatment too. So once the building was developed, there was an ongoing commitment to excellence and collaboration by all those involved in the program. This included a multidisciplinary team of over 70 people. Amongst those 70 staff was a wide range of health, education, and consumer and carer workforce. This required the leadership team of the medical director, the director of nursing, and me as the principal to continually challenge, work with, and encourage our staff to work in a collaborative and multidisciplinary way. This meant that we had to use the principles of intentional collaboration, of working together, learning together, and improving together in order to ensure that the work we did met the needs of the students and the young people in the program. As you can see from the slides, that this has come from our treatment framework. The key to the success of the program has been placing the young person at the centre of all that we do, to ensure that, irrespective of which workforce you are on, the needs, the goals, the hopes, and the dreams of every student are catered for. To ensure that this work happened on the ground, the workforce had to work collaboratively on a day-by-day basis. This meant every part of the program, staff were working side by side, and this required a new and unique approach. Starting from intake processes through to complex case panels, students and staff worked side by side to plan their journey through and out of Adolescent Extended Treatment Centre in Queensland. As part of this process, Department of Health and Department of Education staff had to work side by side to plan, develop and implement programs that tailored their needs to every student's needs. As working as part of a multidisciplinary team, it's still absolutely essential that as teachers and educators, we are really clear about our purpose and what our goals are for the students that enter our service. Whilst we understand that students entering the program require intensive mental health treatment, it is still absolutely critical that we develop programs in an education context that suit their needs. So from our point of view, it's about being incredibly clear about what our goals and needs are in terms of an education staff. When the students enter, we have a very clear 3-step process to working for them and how we develop our programs. Firstly, it's about making sure we understand their needs. It's about understanding what their goals, their hopes, their dreams and their aspirations are. It's about making sure that we understand the system that exists around them, whether it's about understanding how we use the curriculum or the senior secondary curriculum to ensure that we're delivering a program that suits their goals and aspirations. And then our teachers and our education team work tirelessly to ensure that we adjust and modify our program to ensure that every student is successful as they enter the Adolescent Extended Treatment Centre and leave with a new set of plans that they can accomplish as and when they leave, to go forth with the sort of confidence that they require in their lives to achieve what it is that they need. The development and delivery of the Adolescent Extended Treatment Centre would not have been possible without multidisciplinary collaboration. And it is exactly that multidisciplinary collaboration that's going to lead us forward as we move forward into the future. The program has been open 6 months and we have learned a great deal in this time. However, without working together and learning together, growing together and developing together, we wouldn't have been able to be as successful as we have been. And that is also going to dictate the success that we will have over the course of the next few years as the program grows and develops to provide a service for students and young people across the state.
Hi, my name's Perry Trattos and I'm the campus principal at the Queensland Children's Hospital. Look, thanks for your time. Today I really want to share with you some innovation around our school vision. And as you can see on the screen, our school vision is about leading excellence in hospital teaching and learning through innovative and inclusive practices. And certainly COVID has forced us to think more deeply around the innovation part. And that's really what I want to share today. The Australian Institute for Teaching and School Leadership, like many other educational bodies around the world, have said that the threat caused by COVID-19 has meant that teachers in Australia and teachers around the world have had to look for better ways in terms of teaching and learning, and more so around those traditional ways of learning like classrooms. And that's exactly what I want to share with you today, some innovation around teaching and learning beyond the traditional ways of student learning. So I'd like to now just explain in terms of how we teach children in hospital settings in our great state. You might find there's some similarities in your jurisdictions or states as well. So firstly, our curriculum is aligned to the Australian curriculum. And whether, kids come from independent, Catholic or the state school system, our work is the same. So kids working on the same content, which is great, because then it means that, of course, when kids, get better, they return back to their local state schools and communities and seamlessly fit back into their classrooms. So there's minimal disruption in terms of their education. So as we are a large state, and due to the smaller size of some health settings, we don't have classrooms in every setting. So for these smaller programs, teaching occurs bedside or in the patient's room. So teaching and learning exclusively occurs between the teacher or the teacher aide and the student. Where we do have classrooms in hospitals, students who are well enough to come to the classrooms do so. They would participate in the classroom and it would feel very much like a regular classroom in any other school. Now, depending, of course, which classroom you're in across our great state, you may be with students of similar age, and in those smaller regions, it would be treated as if it's a multi-age classroom, ranging from prep to year 12. Now, like many other hospitals around the world, and depending on the length of stay that students are in the hospital, students can either be learning from our school curriculum or from the base school curriculum that their local school sends to us to support them. So when the pandemic started, we needed to go back to our school vision. And it made us think more deeply in terms of how to continue this, where we didn't have the direct access to students. So like many of you, we developed some learning packs and dropped them off to the ward for nurses to take them in. But of course, with the number of students that we have across our sites, it was a big workload, and it wasn't really the best way to combat this issue. We thought about online learning, which I'm sure every other jurisdiction or hospital programs around the world have toyed with. But of course, the COVID experience forced us into this. Now, online learning, specifically live learning, is a great thing to do. However, we just weren't ready at that stage. So we had two passionate teachers who were really focused on online learning in terms of reaching their students, and they went down the road of asynchronous learning. They researched what was already available in the tech world, and they came across something that was already being used before the pandemic. So the two teachers chose Seesaw as our asynchronous platform, as it allowed content to be shared interactively with the student, where they get to choose when they want to engage around their health needs. So think about the many times yourself or your colleagues have walked into a patient's room to teach, and midway or after just explaining the activity, in come the clinical staff. As we appreciate the nature of hospital teaching, medical needs always come first. So as you know, when this happens, we take a step back, the lesson pauses, and we return at a later time, if lucky. So imagine calculating the lost time across the day, across the week, across a term. So we trialled Seesaw during the pandemic, and what our teachers found was that it resulted in high levels of student engagement. Students sent their work via the app, and students completed work when they were ready to do so when clinical staff left the room. This gave students complete control over their learning. When students completed their work, their responses were instantly made available to teachers, which provided them timely feedback. As more of our staff had learned about what the two teachers were doing and the benefits of student learning, it reinforced for us that Seesaw or any other asynchronous learning platform does not replace the teacher, as the teacher is needed to pre-teach the content and to gauge readiness for learning and what differentiation needs to occur through allocated online content. Now that we are back to face-to-face teaching, more of our staff are engaging with this platform, and it's been a credit to our two amazing teachers who have supported staff. I guess the key success to this in terms of learning something new is collegial support, and that's what our teachers have done. They've supported each other. So just very quickly in this slide, you'll see this is our hospital Seesaw library. It's a hyperlinked resource which looks very simplistic. It's fully aligned to the Australian curriculum. So the library allows our teachers to identify a suitable interactive lesson depending on, the learning area. And it's made available to all our teachers across all grade levels. And Seesaw allows you to keep a digital portfolio of student work, including commenting on student submissions. So it saves our teachers time in preparing content as it's already done. So the teacher's role is in differentiating the work to make sure it's at the level of the student. So in this next slide, it represents if you click on the hyperlinked Seesaw Library of English. So I just wanted to show you that it's really easy for our teachers to locate a lesson and then differentiate it for their learners. So Seesaw has been successful for our ward teachers in our context. We will continue adding in further digital lessons in our Seesaw library, but our next step is to support our colleagues outside of Brisbane in our regional programs. The next innovation was something that we were working on for some time, but technological barriers were preventing us from delivering synchronous or live learning for our students. So an updated version of Blackboard Collaborate was released, which is called Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. And this provided the capability for any student anywhere to connect online with peers without the barriers that we were experiencing prior. We are not yet implementing live or synchronous learning, but we aim to do so within the next month. So we see two ways we can use synchronous or live learning. So firstly, for our ward teachers, they'll be able to identify students on the ward and depending on whether they're working on our curriculum work or their own base school curriculum, can set up those learning experiences. They're connecting with other kids of similar age in a classroom kind of environment. Secondly, for those students who need, more individual support, we're looking at the notion of providing some tutorial type support through online. So wherever a kid is across the state, they can connect with any teacher in any setting to get that support. So we are very interested in giving our students who are on the ward opportunities to learn alongside similar aged peers. As we understand, a student's experience in their patient's room can be very lonely, especially when many of our students are social beings in their usual school environments. So we would love to give students more choice where they can choose to attend a live lesson from their own room if they're medically able to do so. Our students in regional programs, where there are limited students of similar ages, will now be able to connect to other kids anywhere across the state. So as you can see on that next slide, it's a photo of a patient entertainment system, which I assume in your settings you may have something similar. So I want to share with you an aspiration of ours, and it's a 5-year plan. As you can see, the student in their bed sees that screen, and there's a whole lot of health information in there. But let's just imagine something else. So now you can see on that patient entertainment system, there's a school timetable. Now imagine it's the morning in that student's own hospital room, and the nurse comes in. And the nurse talks to the student and talks about what their day might look like. But the student then says to the nurse, "Hey, I've got an English lesson in the morning. Do you mind if we can keep that free for me?" So what we're going to be doing is working with Children's Health Queensland to explore this timetable notion where it can be centrally located on the patient entertainment system. I guess the great thing about this idea is that it gives complete control back to the student over their learning in a time where these students have limited control around their environment. Look, thanks very much for your time. It's a pleasure for Michelle, Ben and I to share with you the journey that we've gone through in Queensland. We are a complex state, which I know there's complexity in every jurisdiction where student learning is involved. But our key focus has been about giving students what they need education-wise to make sure that when they go back to their school communities, they're fully engaged in education, because we know that education changes lives for everyone. Our contact details are there. We welcome contact, and we look forward to sharing our journey and of course hearing about yours. Thanks very much.